Jake Morrison woke up slowly. His head hurt badly. The cold metal floor pressed against his face. He tried to remember what happened, but his mind felt fuzzy. The last thing he remembered was working in the engine room of the Starfire. Then alarms started going off everywhere. Captain Rodriguez had ordered everyone to the emergency pods. After that, everything went black. Jake pushed himself up and looked around. This was not his ship. The walls were white and smooth, like polished stone. Strange blue lights ran along the ceiling in patterns he had never seen before. The air smelled different too, sweet, like flowers. "You are awake," said a voice behind him. Jake spun around fast. A woman stood in the doorway, but she was not human. She was tall and thin, with pale skin that seemed to glow softly. Her ears came to sharp points, and her eyes were the color of silver. Long white hair fell down her back like water. "Who are you?" Jake asked. His voice came out rough and dry. "I am Princess Lyra," she said. Her voice was musical, like singing. "You are on my ship now. You and your friends are safe." "Safe?" Jake stood up slowly. His legs felt weak. "Where is my crew? Where is the Starfire?" The princess stepped into the room. She wore a long dress that looked like it was made from starlight. 2 guards followed her. They were tall like her, with the same pointed ears, but they carried weapons that hummed with energy. "Your ship was damaged," Lyra said. "We found you floating in space. We had to bring you here to save your lives." Jake did not believe her. The Starfire was a strong ship. It would not break so easily. "I want to see my captain." "In time," Lyra said. She moved closer to him. "First, you must rest. You have been sleeping for many days. Your body needs to heal." Jake backed away from her until he hit the wall. "What do you want from us?" Lyra tilted her head like a bird. "Want? We want nothing. We are the Valdari. We help those who are lost in space. It is our way." "I have never heard of your people," Jake said. "And we had never heard of yours until now," Lyra replied. "Humans, yes? That is what you call yourselves?" Jake nodded slowly. "Interesting," Lyra said. "We thought we knew all the races that traveled among the stars. But you are new to us. Your ships are different." Something about the way she said different made Jake nervous. It sounded like she was very interested in human ships. "Your technology is strange," Lyra continued. She began walking around the room, looking at Jake like he was something in a museum. "How do your ships move so fast? We have been studying the pieces of your vessel." "Pieces?" Jake felt cold suddenly. "What pieces?" "The parts that broke off. When we found you," Lyra said quickly. But Jake saw something flash in her silver eyes. She was lying. One of the guards stepped forward and whispered something in her ear. Lyra nodded. "I must go now," she said to Jake. "But I will return soon. I have many questions about your people, about your ships, about how you travel between the stars." "Wait," Jake said as she turned to leave. "What about my crew? When can I see them?" "Soon," Lyra said without turning around. "When you are stronger." The guards followed her out. Jake heard a heavy door slide shut behind them. He was alone again. Jake walked around the room. It was small but comfortable. There was a bed, a table, and a chair. Everything was made from the same white material as the walls. He could not find any windows or screens. The door had no handle on his side. He was a prisoner. Jake sat on the bed and put his head in his hands. The Starfire had not been damaged. These aliens, the Valdari, had attacked them. But why? And what did they really want? Hours passed. Jake tried to open the door, but it would not move. He searched the walls for any kind of control panel, but found nothing. The room was like a beautiful cage. Finally, the door opened again. A different Valdari came in, carrying a tray of food. This one was shorter than the princess, with brown hair instead of white. She set the tray on the table and left without saying a word. Jake looked at the food. It looked like fruits and bread, but the colors were wrong. The bread was blue, and the fruits were silver. His stomach was very hungry, but he was afraid to eat alien food. In the end, hunger won. The food tasted good, Better than anything on the Starfire. The bread was sweet, and the fruits tasted like honey. After eating, Jake felt sleepy again. He lay down on the bed and stared at the ceiling. The blue lights moved in slow patterns above him. They were hypnotic, like watching waves on a beach. Jake thought about his crew. Captain Rodriguez was smart and strong. She would not give up, easily. Lieutenant Collins was clever with computers. Maybe she could find a way to send a message to Earth. But Jake was just an engineer. He fixed engines and power systems. He was not a soldier or a spy. What could he do against aliens who could capture entire spaceships? The door opened again. Princess Lyra came back, but this time she was alone. She wore different clothes now, simpler, but still beautiful. Her silver eyes looked curious. "Are you feeling better?" she asked. "I want to see my crew," Jake said. "I know," Lyra replied. "But first, I want to understand. You humans are very different from other races we have met. Your ships use a type of engine we have never seen before." Jake said nothing. Lyra sat in the chair across from him. "We are not enemies, Jake Morrison. Yes, I know your name. I know you are an engineer. I know you are good at fixing things." "How do you know that?" "We found your identification. We learned about your job on the ship." Lyra leaned forward. "I am curious about human technology. Perhaps we can help each other." "Help how?" "You teach us about your engines. We teach you about our science. Both our peoples become stronger." Jake looked into her silver eyes. She seemed honest, but he remembered the lie about the ship being damaged. "What happened to the Starfire, really?" Lyra was quiet for a long moment. "Your ship crossed into our space without permission. We had to stop it." "You attacked us." "We defended ourselves," Lyra said. "But we did not want to hurt anyone. That is why we saved you." Jake did not know what to believe. The princess seemed kind, but she was still keeping him locked up. "If you want to be friends, let me go. Let me see my crew." "In time," Lyra said again. "First, trust must be built. Show me that humans can be trusted. Help me understand your technology." She stood up and walked to the door. "Think about it, Jake Morrison. We could be allies. Your people and mine could travel the stars together." After she left, Jake lay on the bed again. The princess was beautiful and seemed intelligent. Part of him wanted to trust her, but another part remembered the weapons her guards carried, and the way his ship had been destroyed. Jake closed his eyes and tried to think of a plan. Somewhere on this ship, his friends were prisoners too. He had to find them. He had to find a way to warn Earth about the Valdari. But first, he had to figure out what these aliens really wanted, and why Princess Lyra was so interested in human technology. The blue lights continued their slow dance above him as Jake drifted off to sleep, still a prisoner in a beautiful cage among the stars. 3 weeks had passed since Jake woke up on the alien ship. Every day, Princess Lyra came to visit him. At first, their talks were short and careful, but slowly they began to speak more freely. Jake learned that the Valdari controlled many worlds across the galaxy. Lyra told him stories about different planets they had visited. Some were covered in crystal forests, others had oceans of liquid gold. She made it sound wonderful, like the Valdari were explorers bringing knowledge to empty worlds. "We help primitive races learn to live better," Lyra explained one day. She had brought Jake to a large window where he could see the stars. "Before we came, they fought wars over food and water. Now they live in peace." "Peace?" Jake asked. "Or do they just obey you?" Lyra looked surprised by his question. "They obey because they see the wisdom in our ways. Order is better than chaos, Jake. Surely you understand this." Jake was not sure he did understand, but when Lyra spoke, her voice was so certain that he found himself wanting to believe her. The princess had also given him better quarters. His new room was larger, with a real window and books to read. The books were about Valdari history and science. Jake learned that they had been traveling space for thousands of years. They had spread across hundreds of worlds, always bringing their version of civilization to other races. Jake noticed that in all the stories, the Valdari were always the teachers. The other races were always the students. None of the books talked. about what those other races had been like before the Valdari came. "Where are my friends?" Jake asked one morning. Lyra had brought him breakfast, strange fruits that tasted like chocolate and bread that was warm and soft. "They are safe," Lyra said. "They have rooms like yours. They are learning about our people just as you are." "I want to see them." "Soon," Lyra promised. She always said soon, but soon never came. Jake was getting frustrated, but he was also getting confused. He had started to look forward to Lyra's visits. She was smart and asked good questions about human technology. When she smiled, which was rare, her whole face changed. She looked younger and less serious. Sometimes Jake caught her looking at him with curiosity, like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Other times, her silver eyes seemed sad, though she never said why. "Tell me about Earth," Lyra said one day. They were sitting in what she called her garden, a room filled with plants that glowed softly in the dim light. Jake told her about blue skies and green grass. He talked about rain and snow, about cities and farms. He described how humans built things together, how they made music and art. Lyra listened carefully to every word. "It sounds chaotic," she said finally. "Maybe," Jake agreed, "but it is our chaos. We choose it." "Choice can be dangerous," Lyra said. "When people choose wrong, others suffer. When people cannot choose at all, they are not really people anymore." Jake replied. Lyra was quiet for a long time after that. She stared at a flower that bloomed in colors Jake had no names for. "You think differently than I expected," she said. "How did you expect me to think?" "Simpler," Lyra admitted. "Most races we meet think only about basic needs: food, shelter, safety. But you think about ideas." Jake felt a chill. "Most races you meet? The Valdari have contact with many species," Lyra said quickly. "We are the oldest civilization in this part of the galaxy. It is natural that younger races look to us for guidance." But Jake heard something in her voice that made him uncomfortable. The way she said younger races sounded like the way someone might talk about children or pets. That night, Jake could not sleep. He paced around his room thinking about Lyra's words. The Valdari were older and more advanced than humans. Their technology was amazing. Their ships were beautiful. But something felt wrong about the way they talked about other species. Jake had been an engineer long enough to know that advanced technology did not make someone a better person. Some of the smartest people he knew were also the cruelest. The next day, Lyra took him to see more of the ship. They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were covered in carvings that told stories of Valdari victories. Jake saw images of their ships conquering worlds, of other races bowing before Valdari leaders. "This is the history of our people," Lyra said proudly. "We have brought order to chaos for 3,000 years. In one carving, Jake saw creatures that looked almost human kneeling before a Valdari emperor. "Who are they?" he asked. "The Tyranni," Lyra said. "They lived on a world near here. Very primitive. They spent all their time fighting each other over territory. What happened to them? We taught them to live in peace. Now they work in our factories and farms. They are much happier." Jake stared at the carving. The kneeling figures did not look happy. They looked afraid. "Where is their world now?" "It is one of our industrial centers," Lyra said. "Very productive." Jake wanted to ask more questions, but something in Lyra's tone told him to be careful. He was starting to understand that the Valdari idea of helping other races might be very different from what humans would call help. They continued walking until they reached a large room filled with machines Jake did not recognize. Valdari technicians worked at control panels covered in symbols that hurt his eyes to look at. "This is our research center," Lyra said. "We study new technologies here." Jake saw pieces of metal and electronics scattered on tables. Some of the pieces looked familiar. Very familiar. "Is that from the Starfire?" he asked. Lyra nodded. "We are learning how your engines work. Human technology is quite clever, though primitive." "Primitive. You travel faster than light, but your method is rough, inefficient. Our scientists believe they can improve it greatly." Jake felt anger building in his chest. "You destroyed my ship to steal our technology." "We saved your lives," Lyra said firmly. "And we are making your technology better. This benefits everyone. Did you ask us if we wanted your help?" Lyra looked confused by the question. "Why would we ask? We know what is best." That evening, Jake sat in his room and thought hard about everything he had seen and heard. The Valdari had taken his ship, captured his crew, and were studying human technology without permission. But they believed they were doing good things. Lyra believed it too. Jake could see it in her eyes when she talked about bringing order to chaos. She really thought the Valdari were helping other races by conquering them. Jake was still thinking when his door opened. But instead of Lyra, someone else came in. It was a human woman with short dark hair and tired eyes. She looked around quickly, then closed the door behind her. "Amy?" Jake jumped up from his chair. It was Lieutenant Amy Collins from his ship. "Quiet," Amy whispered. "I do not have much time." "How did you get out? Where are the others?" Amy's face was grim. "Jake, we are not guests here. We are prisoners, and they are doing terrible things." "What do you mean?" "I escaped from my cell 2 days ago. I have been hiding in the ship's lower levels. Jake, they have other humans here. Humans from ships that came before us." Jake felt cold. "Other ships?" "At least 3 crews, maybe more. And Jake..." Amy's voice shook. "They are experimenting on them, testing human reactions to their weapons and drugs." Jake sat down hard. "No. Lyra said they help people. She said they bring peace. Look at this." Amy pulled a small device from her pocket. It was a human data recorder. "I found this in what they call their specimen storage. It belonged to Captain Brown of the merchant ship Lucky Strike." Jake took the device with shaking hands. The recording was short. Captain Brown's voice was weak and afraid. He talked about being captured 3 months ago, about his crew being taken away one by one for medical studies, about how the Valdari promised to let them go if they cooperated. The recording ended with Captain Brown begging someone to remember that they had been human beings, not just test subjects. Amy grabbed Jake's arm. "Princess Lyra has been lying to you. The Valdari do not help other races. They use them. And when they are done, those races disappear." Jake's mind raced. He thought about the tyranny in the carvings, kneeling in fear. He thought about Lyra talking about primitive races like they were children who needed guidance. "The technology you have been telling her about," Amy continued. "They are not making it better for us. They are making it into weapons. Weapons to attack Earth." Jake felt sick. "I thought she seemed so kind. Maybe she believes what she is telling you. But Jake, kind or not, she is planning to conquer our entire species." Amy moved toward the door. "I have to go before they find me. But Jake, you have to stop helping them. And you have to find a way to warn Earth." "How can I do that from here?" "I do not know," Amy said. "But you are the only one she trusts. You are the only one who can get close to their important systems." Amy slipped out the door, leaving Jake alone with the terrible truth. Princess Lyra, the woman he had started to care about, was planning to destroy everything he loved. But worse than that, Jake realized he had helped her do it. Every question he had answered, every piece of technology he had explained, had given the Valdari more power to hurt humanity. Jake lay on his bed and stared at the ceiling. The blue lights seemed different now. Instead of beautiful patterns, they looked like the bars of a cage. Tomorrow, Lyra would come again. She would ask more questions about human technology. She would smile and talk about bringing order to chaos. And Jake would have to decide whether to keep lying to himself about. Jake did not sleep that night. He kept thinking about Amy's words and the recording from Captain Brown. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the fear in the dead captain's voice. When morning came, Jake tried to act normal. He ate breakfast and read one of the Valdari books. But the words seemed different now. Stories about bringing order to primitive worlds sounded like stories about destroying entire cultures. Lyra came to see him in the afternoon, as she always did. She wore a blue dress that matched her glowing skin, and her silver hair was braided with small crystals. She looked beautiful, but Jake could not forget what Amy had told him. "You seem troubled today," Lyra said, sitting in the chair across from him. "I am fine," Jake lied. I have good news, Lyra continued. Our scientists have made progress with your engine technology. We believe we can improve it by 300%. Jake's stomach turned. Improve it how? Speed, mainly, but also power output. Your human engines could move much larger ships big enough to carry entire armies. Jake tried to keep his voice steady. Why would you need to move armies? Lyra looked surprised by the question. To bring order to new worlds, of course. It is our duty to help younger races learn to live properly. What if they do not want help? Then, they do not understand what is good for them, Lyra said simply. Children often resist medicine that will make them well. There it was again. Lyra talked about other races like they were children, like they could not make their own choices. Lyra, Jake said carefully, what happened to the races that refused your help? They learned to accept it, Lyra replied. Eventually, they all do. But what if some of them died fighting? Lyra was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer. Sometimes peace requires sacrifice. It is sad but necessary. Jake felt cold. Whose sacrifice? Yours or theirs? Jake, why are you asking? Such strange questions today? Jake looked into her silver eyes. Part of him wanted to believe that she was just misguided, that she really thought she was helping people. But another part of him remembered Captain Brown's voice, full of fear and pain. I want to see my crew, Jake said. I told you they are safe. I want to see them now. Lyra frowned. That is not possible today. Perhaps tomorrow. You have been saying tomorrow for weeks. Jake, please trust me. I know what is best. What if I do not want you to decide what is best for me? Lyra stood up, her face showing confusion and hurt. I have been kind to you. I have given you comfortable rooms, good food, interesting books. I have spent time teaching you about our culture. Why are you being difficult? Because I am not your pet, Jake said, standing up too. I am a human being. I can make my own choices. You are being emotional, Lyra said. This is why younger races need guidance. You let feelings cloud your judgment. Jake stared at her. She really believed what she was saying. To her, humans were just another primitive species that needed to be controlled. Lyra, do you care about me at all? Or am I just useful to you? The question seemed to surprise her. She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. For a moment, her perfect composure cracked, and Jake saw something else in her eyes, something that looked almost human. She started, then stopped. You are useful, yes, but you are also interesting. Interesting how? You think in ways I did not expect. You ask questions that make me think about things differently. Lyra looked away from him. I have never met anyone like you before. Jake felt a flicker of hope. Maybe there was something real between them. Maybe he could reach the person behind the Imperial Princess. Then treat me like a person, not a project, Jake said. Let me see my friends. Let me make my own choices. Lyra was quiet for a long time. Jake could see her struggling with something inside herself. I cannot, she said finally. It is too dangerous. Dangerous how? If you see too much, you might try to stop what must happen. What must happen? Lyra looked at him with something that might have been sadness. Your people will become part of the Valdari Empire. It is inevitable. The only question is whether it happens peacefully or not. Jake felt the last of his hope die. You are planning to invade Earth. We are planning to help Earth, Lyra corrected. Your people are destroying their own world with wars and pollution. We will teach them to live better, by conquering them, by guiding them. Jake realized that Amy was right. It did not matter whether Lyra believed she was doing good things. The result would be the same. Humanity would lose its freedom and become slaves to the Valdari Empire. I will not help you anymore, Jake said. Lyra's face went cold. You do not have a choice. Everyone has a choice. No, Lyra said firmly. Some people are wise enough to choose correctly. Others must be helped to choose correctly. You will continue to answer my questions about human technology. And if I refuse, then your friends will suffer. Jake felt anger building in his chest. You said they were safe. They are safe as long as you cooperate. If you do not, Lyra let the threat hang in the air. Jake wanted to hit something. Instead, he forced himself to stay calm. I understand. Good, Lyra said. Now, I have more questions about your faster-than-light communication systems. For the next hour, Jake answered her questions. But he was careful now. He gave her true information, but not complete information. He told her how human communication worked, but not about the emergency protocols that could warn Earth of an attack. When Lyra left, Jake sat alone in his room and tried to think of a plan. Amy was still hiding somewhere in the ship. Maybe together, they could find a way to send a warning to Earth. But first, Jake needed to know more about Valdari plans. He needed to know when they planned to attack, and how. That night, Jake did something he had never tried before. He tested his door after the guards changed shifts. To his surprise, it opened. Either the Valdari had gotten careless, or they trusted him more than they should. Jake slipped out into the corridor. The ship was quiet, with only dim lights showing the way. He remembered the path to Lyra's private quarters from their walks together. Jake moved carefully through the empty halls. Once he had to hide when a guard patrol passed by. But most of the ship seemed to be sleeping. Lyra's quarters were on an upper level, behind heavy doors. Jake expected them to be locked, but they opened when he touched the control panel. Either Lyra had not expected him to come looking, or she wanted him to find what was inside. The room was large and elegant, filled with beautiful furniture and art from dozens of different worlds. But what caught Jake's attention were the holographic displays floating above a large table. Jake moved closer and felt his blood turn to ice. The displays showed star maps of human space. Earth was marked with a red symbol. So were dozens of other human colonies and stations. But worse than that were the technical specifications floating next to the maps. Jake recognized the designs. They were based on human technology, his technology, but changed into something terrible. The Valdari had taken human faster-than-light drives and turned them into planet-cracking weapons. They had taken human communication systems and turned them into tools for jamming enemy signals. Every piece of information Jake had given them had been twisted into a weapon of war. Jake reached out to touch one of the displays. The image zoomed in, showing Earth in detail. Icons marked major cities, space stations, and military bases. A timeline at the bottom showed the planned invasion was only weeks away. "I hoped you would not come here," said a voice behind him. Jake spun around. Lyra stood in the doorway, no longer wearing her elegant dress. Instead, she wore the simple uniform of a Valdari military officer. She looked tired and sad. "You lied to me," Jake said. "I told you what you needed to hear," Lyra replied. "Just as I told myself what I needed to believe." "You do not believe it anymore?" Lyra walked over to stand beside him, looking at the holographic displays of Earth. "I believed that we were bringing order to chaos. I believed that we were helping primitive races become better than they were. And now? Now I have seen how you think, how you feel, how you love your friends and your world." Lyra touched one of the displays, and it showed images of Earth's cities and forests. "I have learned that intelligence and emotion are not weaknesses to be corrected. They are what make a species worth preserving." Jake stared at her. "Then stop this. Call off the invasion." "I cannot. I am not the Emperor. I am just his daughter, and not even his favorite daughter. The invasion will happen whether I support it or not." "Then help me warn Earth." Lyra was quiet for a long time. Jake could see the battle going on inside her mind. Finally, she spoke. "If I help you, I will be betraying everything I have been taught to believe. I will be betraying my people, my family, my empire. And if you do not help me, you will be betraying yourself," Jake said. "You know this is wrong, Lyra. You know my people do not deserve to be conquered." Lyra closed her eyes. When she opened them again, Jake saw tears on her pale cheeks. "They will kill us both if they discover what we are planning," she said. "Then we better not get caught." Lyra looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched the control panel. The holographic displays changed, showing the ship's internal layout. "Your friend Amy is hiding in the lower cargo bays," Lyra said. "The rest of your crew is being held in detention level 5. If we are going to save your people, we will need their help." 2 days later, The Valdari invasion fleet reached the edge of human space. Jake stood next to Lyra on the bridge of her flagship, watching hundreds of alien warships take positions around the human colony world of New Austin. Jake's heart pounded as he looked at the peaceful planet below. 3 million humans lived there, farming and building homes under the warm yellow sun. They had no idea that death was coming for them from the stars. "The planet's defenses are weak," reported Commander Vex, Lyra's second in command. He was a tall Valdari with cold eyes and scars on his face. "Their ships are old and slow. We can destroy them in minutes." "What about evacuation?" Jake asked quietly. Vex looked at him with disgust. "Evacuation is not necessary. We will kill only those who resist. The survivors will become useful workers." Jake felt sick. "You call that mercy?" "I call it efficient," Vex replied. "Princess Lyra has been too soft on this mission. The Emperor expects results, not sentiment." Lyra said nothing, but Jake saw her hands clench into fists. Over the past 2 days, she had been fighting with her own officers about how to conduct the invasion. Many of them thought she was weak for caring about human lives. "Begin the attack," Lyra ordered, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. The Valdari fleet moved forward like a pack of wolves. Their ships were beautiful and terrible, shaped like silver birds with wings of energy. Against them, the human defense fleet looked like toys. Admiral Katie Barnes commanded the human ships. Jake had met her once at a conference on Earth. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She knew her ships were outmatched, but she would not run. "Human vessels, this is Princess Lyra of the Valdari Empire." Lyra spoke into the communication system. "Surrender now and your people will be spared." Admiral Barnes's voice came back strong and clear. "This is Admiral Barnes of the Colonial Defense Force. We do not surrender to invaders. If you want our world, you will have to take it." Jake felt proud of the brave admiral, but he also felt afraid. He knew what Valdari weapons could do to human ships. "So be it," Commander Vex said with satisfaction. "Begin bombardment." "Wait," Lyra said. She looked at Jake, then at the human ships on the screen. "First, I want them to understand what they are facing." Lyra activated a new weapon system. Jake watched in horror as beams of purple energy reached out from the Valdari ships. But instead of destroying the human vessels, the beams passed through them like ghosts. Then Jake understood. The beams were not weapons. They were scanners. But the scanning process was doing something terrible to the humans inside the ships. On the communication screen, Jake could see Admiral Barnes's bridge. The human crew was not moving. They stood frozen like statues, their eyes wide with terror. "What did you do to them?" Jake demanded. "Neural paralysis," Commander Vex explained with a cruel smile. "They can see and hear everything, but they cannot move or speak. They will experience their own deaths completely aware but helpless to stop it." Jake grabbed Lyra's arm. "You have to stop this." "I cannot," Lyra whispered. "My officers are watching." "If I show weakness now, they will remove me from command." Jake looked around the bridge. Every Valdari officer was staring at him and Lyra. He could see suspicion in their eyes. They already questioned whether their princess was fit to lead this invasion. The Valdari ships continued their advance. The human fleet tried to fight back, but their weapons barely scratched the alien shields. One by one, human ships exploded. In brilliant flashes of light, Jake watched Admiral Barnes's ship, the Defiant, try to ram a Valdari cruiser. The old woman had found a way to break free of the neural paralysis through pure willpower. Her ship struck the alien vessel and both exploded together. "Impressive," Commander Vex admitted. The old female showed courage. Jake wanted to hit him, but Lyra caught his eye and shook her head slightly. They had to wait for the right moment to act. The space battle was over in 20 minutes. The human fleet was destroyed, but they had managed to damage several Valdari ships. More importantly, Admiral Barnes had sent a warning message to Earth before she died. "Begin planetary bombardment," Commander Vex ordered. "No," Lyra said firmly. "We will land troops first. I want to study their cities before we destroy them." Vex frowned. "Princess, the Emperor's orders were clear. We are to eliminate resistance, not study it." "The Emperor also ordered me to learn about human technology," Lyra replied. I cannot do that if we destroy everything from orbit. Jake held his breath. This was the plan he and Lyra had made. They needed to get down to the planet's surface to access the communication systems there. Over the past 2 days, Jake had found Amy and helped free the rest of his crew. They were hidden in different parts of the ship, waiting for the signal to act. Captain Rodriguez had been angry at first, but when Jake explained about Lyra's change of heart, she agreed to help. Very well, Vex said reluctantly. But I will. Command the ground assault personally. That will not be necessary, Lyra said. I will lead the landing myself. Princess, that is too dangerous. I am not afraid of humans, Lyra said with a cold smile. Prepare my personal transport. An hour later, Lyra's ship descended toward New Austin. Jake sat beside her, trying to look calm while his heart raced. In the cargo bay below, Amy and the other crew members were hidden among Valdari troops. The planet's capital city was called Hope Valley. It was a beautiful place, with white buildings surrounded by green fields and blue rivers. As they landed, Jake could see humans running through the streets, trying to find shelter. Set up a command post in the central plaza, Lyra ordered her troops. I want full communication with the fleet. This was what Jake had been waiting for. The command post would have direct access to the planet's communication network. If they could take control of it, they might be able to send a message to Earth. But first, they had to deal with Commander Vex and his loyal troops. Princess, Vex said as they walked through the empty streets. I have been thinking about your recent behavior. Some of the officers believe you have become too attached to the human prisoner. Lyra stopped walking. Are you questioning my loyalty, Commander? I am questioning your judgment, Vex replied. Perhaps it would be better if I took command of this operation. Jake tensed. This was happening sooner than they had planned. I see, Lyra said calmly. And what makes you think the Emperor would approve of you removing his daughter from command? Because the Emperor values results over bloodlines, Vex said, and you have shown too much mercy to our enemies. Around them, Valdari soldiers were setting up their equipment. Jake could see some of them listening to the conversation between their princess and their commander. Very well, Lyra said. If you wish to challenge my authority, do it properly. Single combat, as our laws require. Vex smiled. Gladly, Princess, though I regret that your softness has made this necessary. Jake wanted to stop them, but Lyra gave him a look that said to wait. She had planned for this too. The two Valdari faced each other in the plaza while their troops formed a circle around them. Valdari combat was fast and brutal, fought with energy blades that could cut through metal. Vex was bigger and stronger than Lyra, but she was faster and smarter. They fought in deadly silence, their weapons creating sparks where they met. Jake watched in terror as Vex's blade came within inches of Lyra's throat. But then she spun away and struck back, her blade cutting deep into his side. You fight well for a soft princess, Vex gasped. I fight well because I have something worth fighting for, Lyra replied. With a final, perfect strike, Lyra's blade found Vex's heart. The commander fell to the ground and did not move again. The Valdari troops looked uncertain. They had followed Vex because he was strong, but now he was dead. Lyra was their princess and their military leader again. Anyone else who questions, my authority may challenge me now, Lyra announced. No one stepped forward. Good, Lyra continued. Now, set up the communication array. I want to speak with the fleet. As the troops worked, Jake moved closer to Lyra. Are you hurt? I will live, she said quietly. But we must move quickly. Vex was not the only one who suspected me. Soon someone will report to my father that I am acting strangely. Jake nodded. In the distance, he could see Amy and Captain Rodriguez moving into position with the other human crew members. Everything depended on the next few minutes. The Valdari communication array came online, connecting the landing party with the fleet above, but Jake had helped design the system and he had hidden a few surprises in the programming. Now, Lyra whispered. Jake activated his hidden programs. Suddenly, every Valdari communication system in the fleet was broadcasting something new. Instead of military orders, they were transmitting human music, human art, and human voices. Jake had recorded messages from every member of his crew talking about their families, their dreams, and their love for their home world. He had added music from Earth's greatest composers and images of humanity's greatest achievements. The effect on the Valdari fleet was immediate and devastating. Many of the alien warriors had never heard music before. They had never seen art that was created just for beauty, not for power. They had never heard people speak about love and hope instead of conquest and control. Some Valdari tried to shut off the transmissions, but Jake's programs were too deeply embedded in their systems. For the first time the response from Emperor Theron came faster than Jake had expected. Within hours of Lyra's broadcast, new Valdari ships appeared at the edge of the system. These were not exploration vessels or even regular warships. They were the Emperor's personal death fleet, commanded by his most loyal and ruthless officers. Jake stood with Lyra in the communications center they had built in Hope Valley's City Hall. Around them, human and Valdari technicians worked together, trying to strengthen the signal that was still broadcasting human culture across Valdari space. "My father is coming," Lyra said quietly, reading reports from loyal officers in the fleet above. "He brings the Dark Star Armada and orders to execute both of us for treason." Jake felt cold despite the warm afternoon sun streaming through the windows. "How long do we have?" 6 hours, maybe less. Captain Rodriguez looked up from a communication console. "The good news is that your broadcast is working. We are getting reports from across Valdari space. Some worlds are refusing to send troops to support the Empire. Others are openly rebelling," Amy added. "The signal has reached at least 40 different star systems. Millions of Valdari are hearing human music and stories for the first time. And millions more are joining the Emperor's forces to crush this rebellion," said Lieutenant Collins grimly. "We started something we cannot control." Jake walked to the window and looked out at Hope Valley. Human families were slowly coming out of hiding, helped by Valdari soldiers who had laid down their weapons. Children who had been terrified hours before were now sharing food with alien warriors who had never seen a smile. "Maybe that is good," Jake said. "Maybe some things should not be controlled." A new voice cut through the room like ice. "How touching. The primitive speaks of philosophy." Everyone spun around. In the doorway stood a figure that made even Lyra step back in fear. Emperor Theron was tall and ancient, with skin like white marble and eyes like black holes. His presence seemed to suck the warmth from the air. Behind him came a squad of Imperial guards, their weapons already pointed at the humans and the rebel Valdari. "Hello, daughter," Theron said to Lyra. "I am disappointed but not surprised. You always were weak." "Father," Lyra replied, though Jake could hear the fear in her voice. "I can explain." "No need," Theron said. "I understand perfectly. You have been corrupted by exposure to primitive emotions. Love, pity, compassion. These are diseases that weaken the strong and doom civilizations to chaos." The Emperor walked slowly around the room, examining the communication equipment. "Ingenious, in a crude way, broadcasting sentiment across our networks to confuse our people, but easily corrected." Theron gestured to one of his guards, who began placing explosive charges on the human communication devices. "Father, please listen," Lyra said desperately. "These humans are not primitives. They are intelligent, creative, capable of growth. We could learn from them instead of conquering them." "Learn what?" Theron asked with disgust. "How to waste time on art and music, how to let emotions cloud. Judgment? How to value individual happiness over the good of society. How to value life," Jake said, stepping forward despite the weapons pointed at him. Theron looked at Jake like he was examining an interesting insect. "Ah, the human who seduced my daughter. Tell me, creature, what makes your life valuable?" Jake thought about the question. Around him, his friends waited to see what he would say. Even the Valdari guard seemed curious. "Nothing makes my life more valuable than yours," Jake said finally. "That is the point. Every life has the same worth, human, Valdari, or any other species. We are all just trying to survive and find happiness in a difficult universe." "Equality," Theron spat. "The greatest lie ever told. Some beings are born to rule, others to serve. Some species are destined to spread order across the galaxy, others to be guided by their betters. Your human equality is just a fantasy that leads to chaos." "Our human equality is just a dream that leads to freedom," Jake replied. Theron raised his hand and energy began to crackle around his fingers. Then let me free you from your illusions permanently. Wait, Lyra stepped between them. Father, if you kill him, you will have to kill me too. I will not live in a universe where love is considered weakness and compassion is called disease. Then you will not live at all, Theron said coldly. Guards, execute them both. The Imperial Guards raised their weapons, but before they could fire, explosions rocked the building. Through the windows, Jake could see Valdari ships in the sky above Hope Valley firing on each other. What is happening? Theron demanded. A young Valdari officer ran into the room. My lord, the fleet is in chaos. Half our ships have joined the rebellion. They refuse to fire on the planet. Theron's face went pale with rage. Impossible! The Valdari obey their emperor. Not anymore, said a familiar voice from the doorway. Amy Collins stepped into the room, but she was not alone. Behind her came dozens of Valdari soldiers and officers, all pointing their weapons at the Emperor's guards. The broadcast worked. Better than we hoped, Amy explained. Once your people heard human music and stories, many of them started questioning everything they had been taught. They realized that conquest and control are not the only ways to bring order to the galaxy. One of the rebel Valdari officers stepped forward. Emperor Theron, by the ancient laws of our people, we formally challenge your authority. You have led us down a path of endless war and destruction. It is time for change. Traitors, Theron hissed. I will execute every one of you. With what? Army? The officer asked. Half your fleet has joined us. More ships are declaring for the rebellion every hour. Your empire is crumbling, old man. Theron looked around the room at the weapons pointed at him. For the first time in centuries, the Emperor of the Valdari looked uncertain. You think you can rule without strength? He asked. You think you can maintain order with sentiment and compassion? We think we can try, Lyra said, moving to stand with the rebels. And if we fail, at least we will fail trying to build something better, instead of just destroying what others have built. Theron stared at his daughter for a long moment. Then he laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Very well. Destroy yourselves with your weakness. But know this, other empires will rise to take our place. Stronger empires, more ruthless empires. Your precious humans will fall to them eventually. Maybe, Jake said, but they will fall as free beings, not as slaves. The Emperor said nothing more. The rebel guards took him and his loyal officers into custody. Through the windows, Jake could see the last of the Imperial fleet either surrendering or fleeing toward the edge of the system. In the days that followed, the news spread across both human and Valdari space. The mighty Valdari Empire, which had ruled hundreds of worlds for thousands of years, was dissolving into civil war. Some Valdari wanted to continue the old ways of conquest and control. Others wanted to try Lyra's vision of cooperation and mutual respect. Jake and Lyra worked together to establish communication between Earth and the rebel Valdari worlds. It was slow, difficult work. Centuries of hatred and fear could not be erased overnight. But gradually, trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges were arranged. Humans and Valdari began to learn from each other instead of fighting. Not everyone was happy with the changes. Some humans wanted revenge for the destroyed ships and killed colonists. Some Valdari still believed in the superiority of their race. But enough people on both sides were willing to try that peace became possible. 6 months after the invasion of New Austin, Jake and Lyra stood together on the observation deck of a new space station built jointly by humans and Valdari. Through the large windows, they could see ships from both species docking peacefully side by side. Do you ever regret it? Jake asked. Giving up your empire for this? Lyra smiled, an expression she had learned from watching humans. I gave up. An empire built on fear and gained a universe built on hope. That seems like a fair trade. What will we do now? Now we build something new, Lyra said. Not a human civilization or a Valdari civilization, but something that combines the best of both. It will not be easy. There will be setbacks and failures. But it will be ours to build together. Jake took her hand, marveling at how warm her skin had become since she learned to feel emotions. Together, he agreed. Outside the station, human and Valdari children played in the zero-gravity gardens, laughing and learning each other's languages. Former enemies worked side by side to explore new worlds and solve old problems. The Valdari Empire was gone forever, destroyed by a simple truth that Jake had helped Lyra discover. Love is not weakness, but the greatest strength any civilization can possess. It was love that gave people the courage to fight for what was right. Love that helped them see past their differences to their common hopes. Love that made them willing to sacrifice everything to build a better future. Jake had fallen for a princess and brought down her empire. But in its place, they had built something far more valuable, a dream of what intelligent beings could accomplish when they chose cooperation over conquest, understanding over fear, and love over power. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, Jake thought as he watched human and Valdari children play together among the stars, was exactly as it should be.